All right, let's dive into the latest post-market brief and figure out what's really driving the market. We're going to follow the money, starting right at the heart of the AI boom, and then tracing its ripple effect all the way out across the economy. Let's get to it.
When you look at the market, it's easy to just see a bunch of numbers going up and down. But underneath all that, there's always a story. So what's the real story today? Well, it's a lot bigger than just a few stock tickers. It's about a massive, fundamental shift in technology. Who's paying for it, who's building it, and how it's starting to change literally everything else. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to start at the core with this incredibly powerful AI spending loop. Then we'll look at the companies that are actually building the physical foundation for all this growth. After that, we'll switch gears and jump into healthcare because it shows how not every sector is on the same ride. And finally, we'll zoom all the way out to look at the big economic picture and see how all these pieces fit together. Okay, our story starts right here, at the epicenter of it all. And look, this isn't just about hype. We're talking about a very real, self-feeding cycle of investment that's creating an absolutely massive wave of demand across the entire tech world. To really get what's going on, you have to understand this feedback loop. It's actually pretty simple, but it is incredibly powerful. So, step one, the big hyperscalers, think Microsoft, think Meta, they pour billions and billions of dollars into AI. Step two, all that spending creates just insane demand for the specialized chips made by companies like Nvidia. And step three, all those new chips need somewhere to live, right? Which, boom, fuels the need for more and more physical data centers. It's a cycle where spending just creates more spending.
And you can see how each of these giants has its own special role to play. You've got Microsoft, whose cloud and AI flywheel is just humming along with double-digit growth. You have Meta, using its super resilient ad business like a war chest to fund its own huge AI ambitions. And then, smack in the middle of it all, you have Nvidia, the undisputed king of the entire AI stack.
And hey, if you need just one number to really wrap your head around Nvidia's importance, here it is, $5 trillion. I mean, let that sink in. This isn't just another company anymore. It's become a core piece of our global tech infrastructure, and that valuation, well, it reflects that.
So really, it all boils down to this one simple phrase. It's a spend drives spend loop. The money from the hyperscalers flows directly into semiconductors and data centers. That, right there, is the engine driving so much of the market.
So if the hyperscalers are the engine, who's actually building the roads and the bridges? Well, that brings us to the very first ripple effect. The companies creating the actual physical foundation where AI lives and breathes. There's a term for this. It's called second derivative trades. It sounds a little technical, but the idea is dead simple. You've heard it before. During a gold rush, you can try to find gold, or you can get rich selling the pickaxes and shovels to all the prospectors. These are the pickaxe and shovel companies of the AI gold rush. And this whole infrastructure layer has its own set of key players. You've got companies like KLA, which is absolutely critical for making the chips in the first place. Then you have Equinix, which is building the data centers to put them in, and they're reporting record bookings. You even have companies like Regal Rexnord getting huge orders just to get powered to these new facilities. The demand is just rippling down the entire supply chain. And to put the sheer physical scale of this into perspective, just look at Equinix. They've got plans on the books for over 900 megawatts of new data center capacity. That is a mind-boggling amount of power and physical space, and it's all being driven by that AI demand we were just talking about. The bottom line here is pretty clear. If you're trying to find the most direct, tangible result of the AI boom, this is it. The money pouring into data centers and the whole semiconductor supply chain is the clearest ripple effect we're seeing right now. Okay, so we've seen that really tight feedback loop in the tech world. But what's happening in other sectors? Let's pivot over to healthcare, where honestly, the story gets a lot more complicated. It's a great reminder that this AI wave isn't lifting every single boat equally. Out here, execution is absolutely everything. And this is just a perfect illustration, a real tale of two very different stories in health tech. In one corner, you have TransMedics. They are a clear leader in their category, showing strong growth and scaling up. In the other corner, you have a company like Teladoc, which is much more of a prove-it story. It's a turnaround narrative, where the focus is on just proving the business model can work long-term. And it's not just TransMedics. We're seeing other standouts that are just executing really well. MiMedx is hitting record revenue with high margins. Waystar is showing how resilient it is in healthcare payments. AtriCure is beating expectations thanks to a new product cycle. What's the common thread here? It's clear,
undeniable momentum.
So what's the big lesson from looking at a sector like this? In this kind of market, the winners tend to be the profitable growers who have clear, specific reasons for that growth, like a new product or a strong pipeline. It's way less about just writing a big theme and much more about solid company-by-company execution. All right, let's zoom out one last time and look at the biggest ripple of them all, the macroeconomic wave. Because, no company exists in a vacuum, and there is a really big shift happening right now that could affect the entire landscape. So what are we looking at? This is M&T Bank's new prime rate. They just cut it to 7%. Now, why in the world does one bank's rate matter? Well, because it's a huge signal. It's one of the first concrete signs that the Federal Reserve's recent rate cuts are finally starting to trickle down through the rest of the financial system.
This is what you'd call a tailwind. For all the parts of the economy that are sensitive to interest rates, think housing, car loans, consumer credit. Lower rates are a very, very good thing. It just means it could get a little easier to borrow money, and that helps get things moving.
But, and this is a huge but, even with a nice macro tailwind, execution still reigns supreme. I mean, just check in on these two consumer platforms. eBay is actually showing some real resilience with solid revenue growth and strong returns to shareholders. Meanwhile, Etsy is going through what they're calling an execution reset. They've got a new CEO and their sales are actually down. It just goes to show you, a rising tide doesn't lift a boat with a leak in it.
So, how do we tie all this together? Well, the thinking is, if the Fed keeps on this path of cutting rates, then cyclical sectors, the ones that do really well when the economy is improving, could be in a good spot. The key is to find companies with what's called operating leverage, which is just a fancy way of saying their profits can grow even faster than their sales when things start picking up.
So let's do a super quick recap of this whole journey. It all starts with that powerful AI feedback loop driving tech spending. That, in turn, fuels a massive infrastructure buildout. But as we move away from pure tech, we see that it's really execution and specific catalysts that separate the winners from the losers. And then wrapping around this whole story is a potential new tailwind from a shifting interest rate environment.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. We've seen the first and second waves of this AI ripple effect. We're seeing how it's starting to influence the whole economy. So the big question now is, as these ripples keep spreading out, which industry is next in line to be completely transformed? That's something we should all be watching. Thanks for joining.